welcome to Wine Dine Combine, where the world of wines unfolds right before your eyes. Today we are with a famous Maltese opera singer, world famous opera singer. Actually, you are one of the very well tenors all around the world and wider, maybe in universe. Joseph, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for welcoming us in your private home. Most people know you for your singing and for your voice, but very few people know your wine taste. When the wine became your passion?
Oh, it's a long story. My father loved wine. Of course, he did not have access to the wines in Malta to which we have access today. This was the early 90s, and he always let me have a little sip. And Malta in the 80s, it was very hard to get any wine, foreign wine at all. Then it started changing from, let's say, 88, 89. Then wines like Frascati, Chianti, Mouton Cadet, some Spanish wines, basic wines, but at the time they were very expensive, even though they were basic wines. But they started discovering with my father, Frascati, for example, Verdicchio de Castel de Gese, and we started tasting, and I loved the taste. And fast forward a few years, I was 20, and we had a family friend that unfortunately passed away a few years ago at the ripe old age of 94. And she had a small cellar in her house in Belgium, in Lens. Her brother, Gilbert Baudez, was a wine collector, wine merchant in Burgundy, and he used to send her some really interesting Burgundy wines. And I started tasting, and I said, "Wow, these wines taste great." She would decant them in old decanters, beautiful, 250 to 100 years old, and we used to grill meat on the barbecue outside in her garden. And I fell in love there with wine, and I immediately, with the little money I had, I bought my first couple of bottles from Burgundy. I still have some in the wine cellar. I'll show you later. And then not a few now, it's a long time ago, in 2006 I think it was, I'm not sure, I met in Malta Michael Tabone of Atelier Michael Tabone. Then we hit it off immediately. We became great friends almost immediately in a very short time, and he then opened the world to the Bordeaux, specifically Saint-Émilion. And I went to Saint-Émilion. I went first to sing, and I tasted the wines. The minute I tasted the Bordeaux, I was in love. It's that once in a life moment when you drink something. I forgot what he served first, because Michael opens 6 to 8 bottles of wines with the medium group. So I forgot. It might have been a Magdalene. I'm not sure. But then, of course, apart from Magdalene, the great houses, the Figeac, the Lasserre, which are Maltese favorites, the Grand Corben d'Espagne, the Coutet, the Angelus, so many. And the minute I discovered these wines and I went to Saint-Émilion, I not only became a lover of Bordeaux, I became a lover of Saint-Émilion, and one of the de facto ambassadors of Saint-Émilion. And because of Michael Tabone, he changed, I think, completely the landscape of wines in Malta. He is, of course, not just my friend, but my wine guru, my food guru, because, of course, with wine goes fine cuisine. And I have to say that if it wasn't for this incredible world of wine, because then, of course, I discovered Spanish, American, New World wines, so there's a lot. But Bordeaux, Saint-Émilion specifically, will always be in my heart.
So it's that first visit that enticed you to get into world of wines.
Absolutely.
And thankfully to Michael Tabone, we are here where we are. Do you remember the first wine, per se, which stopped you in your tracks? You say it was Magdalene, but you're not sure.
No, Magdalene was, I think that's around 2006. But I discovered fine wines before, in my early 20s. And I think the first vintage I bought was 2004. But I will check in this. I think it was 2004. I'm not sure. It was Burgundy. I would be lying if I tell you what it was, but it was a Burgundy, and it was an old Burgundy. Now, old wines, and I'm a lover of old wines. It's an acquired taste. Some people like new wines, bold wines, Italian wines, rich, high in alcohol. I prefer the wines that have been aged, and not every bottle of wine should and can be aged, but when it's a great bottle of wine, and even more importantly a great vintage, then the wine can age, and then it becomes subtle, it becomes full of different colors,
it develops through the
different taste, if it's stored well, if it's aged well. And usually the older wines usually start as very bold, very in your face, high in alcohol, and then as they age 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, even sometimes 70 years, wine can still be fresh, can still be they can still be interesting and complex, which is extraordinary.
People should understand this complexity.
Yeah.
But we are trying to make this world of wines a bit closer to the normal people, to understand that nothing is scary in the world of wines. The wines are open for everyone, Doesn't matter what you do in your life, you can still afford a bottle of wine in your range. That is.
Well, here's the thing. Almost invariably, when you're paying more than 50 euros for a bottle of wine, you're not paying for the quality, you're paying for the name. For the brand. So I've served wines blind here that cost 35 euros, and they ranked high, blind, complete, same vintage, same conditions, same everything, and they compared high in the chart of when me and my friends rate them to wines that cost 10 times as more, 15 times as more. So it's really, of course, the chances are when you buy an expensive bottle, the chances, if the bottle was stored well, the chances are that you're buying something special. But beyond 50, let's say maximum 100 euros for a bottle of wine, what you're paying for in the end is the name. And then of course it depends which region. I think the best value for money wines in the world are probably in Spain. And there's a lot of, there's some great Chilean wines. There's
Argentinian now.
Argentinian, you have lots of wonderful Malbec that I think can really age wonderfully. So if I drink a 10 euro bottle of wine, I'm gonna say this wine tastes great. For example, such a wine is Salice Salentino, which is a very cheap wine, but it's gorgeous. It really can give a lot of pleasure, and it's great with a big fat steak on the barbecue. So yeah.
What's the wine place behind the glass for you? Is it a ritual? Is it an escape? Is it a reward on the end of the day?
I mean, it is a bit of a reward because I only drink with my friends. I almost, unless I'm cooking, in my life, I never opened a bottle of wine just to drink by myself. Never. Because for me, wine has, unfortunately, alcohol. I say unfortunately because alcohol is bad for you. No matter what anyone tells you, even small amounts of alcohol are not good in the human body. It's a poison, so much so that the first thing that the body does, it tries to eliminate it. Okay, and there's the whole process, and so wine is a reward. Wine should be definitely drunk, be drunk responsibly. But we, at least speaking for myself and my friends, we never drink wine for alcohol. Alcohol is an unfortunate byproduct
of the wine
that needs to be there for the wine to be good. We drink the wine for the pleasure, because of its history, because of its story, because of the complexity, because of the sweat and labor the winemaker has to go through. It's a nightmare to be a winemaker. If you are a winemaker, especially where you are in a controlled region, where you can't water the vines, for example, you have frost, you have too much heat, too little heat, too much rain, little rain, you have all these parameters, which is why a great vintage is so special, because what a great vintage is not only the capability of the winemaker, but of the calendar year, of the whole growth of the raisins, of the grapes, that everything was almost perfect, and then you have the perfect grape from which you can make the perfect wine. And then you have, of course, the great winemakers like Angelus, Mr. Hubert de Boar, who was in this house, who's a genius, and he's able to make a great wine also from a bad vintage, in inverted commas. And there are, of course, today other winemakers, as to Grand Corben d'Espagne, Coutet, Figeac, Chateau Figeac in Saint-Émilion. They have just invested in a wine cellar that truly looks like a spaceship. I mean, they have the most, most advanced technology. They're experimenting now with new things, and I feel really privileged and honored to know a lot of these people. You
traveled the world, and what would be the cellar that you saw that you really say, oh wow, this is something out of this world?
I mean, I have to say that the wine cellar in Moldova was incredible. You go down there and you can travel kilometers in kilometers. I mean, that was really, I mean, who knows what they have there. I don't know if it's true, but there's a story when Yuri Gagarin went in the wine cellar. He stayed there for 5 days. I'm not sure that's true or not, but I think it's true.
He stayed less in space.
Probably he stayed less in space than I mean, if I had the choice, I would definitely choose a wine cellar. But I mean, I saw too many wine cellars to really zero on one, because I have to say I focus more on the quality of the wine I drank rather than what I saw. What I saw is great, but what you drink. I can mention one. The cellar of Hotel Lucep of my friend Jean-Claude Bernard in Bonn, which was right to Burgundy. That was the biggest wine night I ever had in my life. There we drank bottles. I can tell you this, the worst wine we had that night was a Romani Conti Saint Vivant 2009, and I have the videos. That was the worst wine we had in the 12 bottles he opened. So you can imagine what we drank. And we went in the 1940s. It was like a religious experience, because I drank wines that few people in the world drank, because they're so expensive that not even I can afford them. I can't afford. Even if I can't technically have the conscience to open, a wine that is, double, I don't know, 5,000, 4,000 euros, to then turn it into water.
You mentioned hosting. As far as I know, you are a great host. You always have people here in the house, friends of our friends. You like cooking. You like life, per se. So, what is your secret? Why do you like socializing so much, but you like to be a host instead of going and be hosted? I mean, I'm sure you do, but...
As a family, my mother was a miracle worker. Before we had mobile phones, you remember this, people used to come to your house without warning you. And we had many times when we had 6-10 people coming to the house, knocking in our house. We were not expecting them. My mother, within 35 minutes to 40 minutes, she has full rabbit, full pasta, full antipasto. It's incredible. And 10 people, 12 people, 14 people eat. This was since I was my mother's family. Again, they were a big family, 12 brothers and sisters. My mother was one of 12. And again, we go to grandma, and she starts cooking cheap cuts of meat, and this meat used to put red wine, garlic, olive oil, and it used to become so good, this cheap meat. In Maltese we call it laham tal friza, which literally means, translated,
meat from the freezer.
Meat from the freezer. And this meat used to come so good, and she used to put finish it off some lemon, and we used to eat, from nothing. Then bread, then you put the bread in the sauce. So my idea of hosting is, I don't cook expensive stuff really when people come. Rarely, maybe king prawns sometimes is the most expensive thing, but usually it's pizza, and everybody can make pizza, whether in the pizza oven or whether in the home oven. It's cheap to do. All you do is flour, water, and yeast. In my case, I use sourdough and
a bit of talent.
And I made a lot of bad pizza before I started cooking the good one. In fact, once I have a group chat, and one of my friends asked, "What is the secret of your recipe?" and the other friend typed in the chat group. He said 5 years of victims, and it's completely true. You know, I don't have a taste for expensive cars. I don't have a taste for expensive watches. I do have a taste for good bottles of wines, and my idea of family is cooking and being together, family and friends, and that's how I brought up my children. I don't like going out a lot. When I work abroad, I'm all the time in a small apartment. I have to either cook alone, be by myself, or if I'm lucky to have a girlfriend traveling with me, that's great. But we can't eat out, we can't drink, because I have to sing. When you sing, you can't drink, you can't smoke, you can't even talk a lot. So when I'm here, then of course I want to see my friends, of course I want to see my family. So it really comes from that. And yes, I love hosting. Yes, I love giving. You know, to people, you know, a couple of hours with good wine and good food.
When it comes to the cellar that you own, how did you curate it? With historical, with emotional, or with hedonistical point of view? From what I could hear now, hedonistical point is that one of enjoying the good wine. But is there any investment behind it? Some afterthoughts?
Well, a good bottle of wine and a good vintage from a great house is always an investment. But I never sold so far one bottle of wine in my life. I gave a lot of wine as gift, but I collect purely wines that I like to drink. There are some exceptions, or I collect wines that I think I will like to drink, because of course I haven't even drunk every bottle of wine. I haven't drunk a sample of each bottle of wine I have in the cellar. I have so much wines that I still haven't yet even tasted. They're still in boxes, most of them. So it's curiosity. It's also something to pass on to my children. Both my children like wines, and wine is also a legacy. Wine is like
tradition,
like an old Patek Philippe that you give to your children to continue, an old ring, an old necklace. It's like a family heirloom, a wine collection. You know, when we buy new wines, I have everything online on Vivino. And every bottle of wine I register, I put notes, what I think about it. And I'm involving my kids. They're 21 and 19, but they have an advantage in the world of wines that only children that are born into families that love wine have. Because they were exposed to Saint-Émilion at the age of 5, 6, 7. And they've tasted these wines. Very little, of course, I had to spit it back out, but they did. And that wine gives you... knowing wine is like knowing 100 great books. Because wine has nothing to do about drinking and getting drunk. Me and my friends, we never drink to get drunk. We just get drunk sometimes by drinking, which is completely different. Wine is a world where you meet great people. It's a world where you meet the history of wine. I mean, the history of wine goes back 6,000 years. If you could do a PhD on just the study of wines. You know, wines is how the civil how it
one variety only.
Exactly, yeah. How it evolved, you know, and how civilization, the Roman times and the Greek times. Of course, the Romans copied everything.
What we know of,
you know. And if you go in Georgia, for example, with their wine history, and you know, people call me a wine expert. I am very far from being a wine expert. I'm a wine lover, and the two things are completely different. Michael Tabone would be a wine expert in the region of Bordeaux for sure. But even him, you know, he would need to study another 10, 15 years to go into the New World, to go into the Californian, to go into the you know the South American. You know, wine is a very, very, very big world.
But when we are talking about this, what entices you the most to go and venture into new countries? Is it just searching for the new taste, or it's, you know, you communicate with these people and you find out something new, and then you say, okay, I need to go and see this cellar, I need to go and visit this winery?
More than wineries and cellars, new wines. I have hunger for knowledge, any knowledge that interests me. For example, I read medical journals that all the doctors read. And sometimes when I go to the doctor, they are surprised I know the medical term for certain conditions, because I have a hunger for for knowledge and a hunger for new things. If you go, I didn't go for many wine trips except Saint-Émilion. I went many, but if you go, every time I go to a Saint-Émilion wine trip, I learn something new. How they make the wine, the technique, the evolution, new techniques they are experimenting with, and how sometimes it goes full circle and they discover the old way is the best way. Not always, but sometimes they have that circle. And the knowledge, the hunger to know more, the hunger to discover a new gem. You know, it's like you're a diamond hunter and you always want to discover a diamond that wasn't known about before with a different color pattern, maybe. And that is wines. And when we discover a new wine, which is great, all of my group of friends, we get excited in the group chat when we meet, you know, let's taste this champagne, this white wine, this Sauvignon, this Chardonnay, you know, and then of course we disagree. I, for example, love a Chardonnay, an American Chardonnay called Kistler. One of my friends, I'm not going to mention who, he hates it. He absolutely hates it. But there again, in wine, you have, again, one man's garbage is another man's treasure. And same in wines, one man's wine which doesn't taste well is something, nectar from the gods for someone else. There's also that.
Yeah, the wine is acquired taste, I mean,
always. But there is a wine for everyone. Like opera. I always say, people, I don't like opera. Did you hear all operas ever composed? Not even I heard all the operas. How do you say all? Exactly. I don't like. No, you can only say that when you've heard every single opera. Then I say, okay, I've heard them all, so I don't like opera. Same with wine. You say, I don't like wine. No. Have you tasted all wine? And many times I had people like this. Come, I don't like wine. I said, what wine did you ever taste? Oh, this, and they mentioned bad wine, you know. They tell them, try a sip of this. Oh my God, this is really nice. Well, of course, you were drinking bad wine. How do you want to love wine if you were drinking bad wine?
Any bottle that you never open and you're dying for and it's never a good time. I'll do it next year, I'll do it next birthday, next occasion, and it stays there and you are really dying to open it.
I have special bottles that I would never open by myself. If my friends ask, I probably will. I think ultimately, if something happens to us and we pass, you know, we die, we're not going to take any of the bottles with us. So really, the only bottles that are yours are the one that you drink. Because the one that you don't drink, you're probably going to leave behind. Two, of course, in my case, hopefully my children.
So when you're rehearsing for your performance, you never, first of all, you said you are abstaining from
zero
alcohol.
Zero alcohol.
How does it work? How long do you need to abstain from alcohol, from wine per se?
So, without exaggerating, if for example I was in New York now in March, April for 2 months, I drank wine once in a restaurant, once. Sometimes 4 months go by, 5 months go by, and I would have had 2 glasses of champagne in a work setting after a performance, where there's a reception where you have to have, but I'm talking about 2 spoons of wine if. So no, because wine, unfortunately, for a singer, it does 2 things. In my case, it gives me acid reflux, which is very bad for the voice. 2, it dehydrates. It makes the mucus thicker and it makes it harder to sing. So, plus it lowers a bit your immune system. It can be bad. So, yeah, some people say, yeah, but a glass a day will not be bad, but I don't drink wine as a medicine. I drink wine as a pleasure. And if it's a pleasure, 1 glass for me will not do it. So I'd rather not drink it and rather drink it when I can, when it's not going to harm me and what I'm doing. But for me, abstaining is not difficult. Because I don't have so far an addictive personality. Only 2 addictions I have in my life is my children, which is not a bad addiction, and chocolate, which is why I don't buy chocolate in the house, because if there is chocolate, I will eat it.
Does chocolate harm your voice?
Indirectly, yes, by making you fat. And some chocolate sometimes can also, because it has milk, it can make your mucus thicker. But little amount of chocolate, no, it does. It actually does good, especially dark chocolate. But again, with chocolate, so if you give me today a Romane Conti, 1982, Romane Conti, I don't know. And you tell me, I'm going to give you this, and in 20 years I want to find it here. I'm not giving it to you, you keep it for me. You'll come in 20 years and you'll find your Romane Conti. If you give me a jar of Nutella, and you tell me tomorrow, I want to take it. I will go, I go around it like this, like a shark does to a seal, for example. In the sea. Oh, come on, it's 500 grams. If I take a spoon, nothing will happen, and I'll probably finish it. Haven't done that now for a few years, but with chocolate and me, we're not friends, and I don't do drugs. I never had one cigarette in my life, not one cigarette. I like cigars sometimes, but cigars you don't inhale, and very limited number of cigars, but chocolate is a big problem.
Let's say we mentioned that you like hosting, and let's say that you are going to go for a 3-course dinner. You're preparing 3 courses for your friends. Which wine you will pop up with these 3 courses? What will be your favorite 3 course? But it's your choice. No friends calling this and that. It's you.
So I'm going to give you an example, but this is just an example. If I'm, let's say it's summer, it's not summer, let's say it's April, spring. I don't like eating oysters in summer. I think even the best ones, I think is dangerous because of the heat. But let's say it's April, and I'm doing a spring lunch, we can stay outside. I would start with a Sauvignon Blanc or Polyfumé with oysters. I would then move, or champagne, a Blanc de Blanc, for example. Then sometimes we had foie gras. Then I would serve a Chardonnay. Then I would cook, let's say, if I'm doing meat on the grill, a nice Cabernet or Merlot or a blend. So, but then again, this happens when we have 6 to 10 people, sometimes 16, sometimes 20. You can't force what they drink. So what I do is I have a champagne, a Chardonnay, and a Sauvignon, and they drink what they want. Sometimes it can be Riesling. So I think wines is very subjective. For example, some of my friends, they don't like red wine with their fish. Well, it depends what the fish is. If it's a very delicate fish, but if it's a lampuca, and it's a grilled lampuca or it's a fried lampuca, then I think a red wine is absolutely... Or tuna steak, I think a red wine is absolutely fine. It really depends. It also depends from the mood. It depends from the weather. If the weather is thick with humidity and it affects the way we perceive. It depends from your mood. It happened to me. I'm in a bad mood. I had this wine before. When I was in a good mood, this wine gave me incredible pleasure. When I was in a bad mood, this wine didn't work. And thank God, I never drink when I'm depressed or in a bad mood. Thank God, because I think that's very dangerous. And I think that I'm not sure a study was done, but it would be interesting to know how mood directly affects how we enjoy wines and food, of course, because we're talking about ultimately the same taste buds.
If we paired some of your favorite wines with some areas that you are
singing,
let's say that what would go with Nessun Dorma, for example? Champagne with Nessun Dorma. Nessun Dorma, it is a beautiful area, but it has become the national anthem of football. It was, of course, immortalized by the 3 tenors in the 1990 Italia 90 in Caracalla in Rome. I would say champagne with Nessun Dorma. So tickling taste, but quite
a big champagne, a Blanc de Blanc, maybe an old Blanc de Blanc, couple of maybe 20 years. Blanc de Blanc, so the bubbles are a bit less, because then too much bubbles is too much excitement with the high notes of Nessun Dorma. It becomes too much.
Or what would you pair with La Bohème?
La Bohème. Well, they mention Bordeaux in the second act in Café Mamuse. No, because it's mentioned in the opera, Bordeaux. So it's actually a good question, because it's one of the few operas where a specific wine brand mentioned, and I think the other one is Elixir d'Amore. when Dulcamano says Bordeaux non elisir, which elisir, the story of Elisir d'Amore is that he gives a love potion to Nemorino, and then he tells the people, he breaks the fourth wall, and he tells the audience that it's not Elisir but it's Bordeaux. So Bordeaux twice. Those are the two operas so far that I know that a specific wine region is mentioned, which is Bordeaux. Then there's Cavallo Rusticano from Ascani, when they say Viva il vino spumeggiante. So it's vino spumeggiante, and it's in Cavallo Rusticana, which is in Sicily. What are they drinking? That's a good question. Probably they might be drinking the wine they make in Modena, Lambrusco, which is a bit fizzy red wine.
By your opinion, is there a parallel to be drawn between the complexity taste and let's say texture of wines and musical notes, musical sheets, music per se, not opera only?
Yes. There's a lot of parallels between opera singing and wine, but as well of how we perceive some music and wine. There's a wine for every mood, right? If you're feeling a bit heavy, you can go for lighter wine. If you feel fresh, then and you have a big food to eat, then you can pair it with a big wine. Music is the same. But even without mentioning opera, if you ask someone, do you like to listen to the same music all the time? They say no. So if you're working out, it's one kind of music. Today, before just you came, you saw me coming out of the gym. In the gym, I play rock, heavy metal music, but I also play sometimes Dies Ira from Verdi's Requiem, which is bam, Dies Ira, da, 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 da. When you're lifting weights, that's just as effective as Metallica, Sad But True. It really and it does, to me at least, it has the same effect. It gives me that extra push, to bench press or to lift or to box. I'm doing
so
boxing
you're
as
channeling
well.
those goosebumps up
Well,
to your...
yes. I mean, how did music start? Music started. Wine started when they first fermented fruit, right? Music started with the first shout, with the first person who could shout in tune.
Could it be that it started when they tested first time?
Maybe. No, but how did music start? Music starts. What do they play in Scotland in the war in the army? Bagpipes.
Bagpipes.
It was used for war. It was used for religious ceremonies, for weddings, for meetings.
They were hitting on the very long distance.
Yeah, drums.
Heard.
Boom, boom, rhythm. Because for battle you need order, you need discipline. Order and discipline is rhythm. The soldiers, the rhythm, they have the same rhythm, they walk the same way. Then, of course, that's how music started. And later, not much later, but then we had the religious ceremonies in the church. The church is responsible for probably the original opera and all music that we listen today, right? All music at the time was religious. So. And remember as well that the church with the wine thing, of course, the wine was used in ceremonies, but even in pagan ceremonies. Preceding Christianity by thousands of years. We're talking about prehistory. We're talking about before the coming of the Christ. So it is as I said, the parallels are endless.
Did you ever think that particular music tastes, the same wine tastes different with listening to different music?
I've never really thought about that, but for sure, if there is background music and is annoying, it will put me off the meal. Really. For example, when I go to people's houses, I don't go a lot, but when I go, sometimes they put to make a nice gesture towards me, they put on my music. Worst thing you can do. I hate listening to myself, because when I listen to myself, I'm always looking for something I could have done better, for something that, and yes, sometimes when there was annoying music, even instrumental. For example, recently I was with someone in a restaurant, I forgot where we were, and the music was the same repetitive thing. I forgot where were we, but it was the same repetitive on and on and on. I couldn't enjoy the food.
You see the world, but let's talk about Malta.
Okay.
How tuned in you are on the local wines, on the local wine producers? Are there some producers that they earn their place in your heart?
This is a very tricky question because I am patriotic. I'm very patriotic, as people know. I'm a diplomat. I'm a Maltese culture ambassador. I've declined any pay for this, so for me it's just a symbolic thing since 2012. And I appreciate and I really like some of the local wines. All the big winemakers in Malta have some really good wines. For example, some of my favorite are Antonin, I think that's Marsovin if I'm not mistaken. Marsovin, where they take the grapes from Ramla Bay in Gozo, and that Chardonnay. I really like that Chardonnay. It's been consistent for many years now, and it's one of the wines I buy when I want people ask me for a local wine. Then there of course, then I like the Marnisi, which I think is also Marsovin, if I'm not mistaken. This time they have these grapes, mostly Cabernet, I think, if not only Cabernet from Marsa Schlock. The Marnisi, I think, is Marsovin. I hope it's not Delicata.
It is Marsovin.
It is Marsovin, but Delicata as well. They have some nice wines. I've had some great wines from Tabetta. I've tasted some interesting wine, for example, from Marcus Divinus. I should actually explore more about Maltese wines. I haven't explored as much as I want to. That is my honest reply. Again, I tend to prefer northern made wines, so more to the north, so more northern Italy, of course, colder France, climate. You know, a bit colder climate. I tend to appreciate wines. For example, I know there are some really good Sicilian wines, but I've tried them, but they're not my favorite. Okay, there are some really interesting white wines, like Donna Fogata, but you know, it's not the taste. Again, Lebanese wines. I know Chateau Moussard, for example, Kefraya. I have in my cellar many bottles from Lebanon. They're good wines, but they're not my favorite. Remember, and this is I'm not saying these wines are inferior. I'm just saying that my
personal taste.
That my taste is more tuned towards the northern, you know, France, north of Italy. If I have to, Spain. You know, Vega Sicilia, for example, incredible wine.
More sensitive, more nuanced taste.
Not always, because I love, of course, and I love Californian Cabernet. But for me, a full-bodied Sicilian wine, to mention Sicilian wine, for me it's too rough. I prefer the more silky Californian way of making the wines. And of course, it depends which California, there are so many. But you know, then it's a question of taste. Then sometimes you serve the Sicilian wine blind, which you think it's Californian and it's Sicilian. So there's also exceptions. This is why I don't say, I could have said, no, I don't like Maltese wines. No, because A, I haven't tasted them all. And B, there's always the
next year,
the surprise in the next year. So, you know, categorical statements, in my opinion, in wine, same like politics, should never be made, because you never know what the next bend, the next turn might bring.
In 2012, you were appointed as cultural ambassador of Malta. Maybe you can tell us more about this.
Oh, I mean, boy, I've lost count of the personalities that came to Malta that I took care of, taking care of. For example, I know for a fact that Andrea Bocelli, when he came to Malta, he discovered Malta, and his team ended up doing videos here for both himself and also for his son, Matteo. When Ruth Bader Ginsburg came to Malta, I was the one who did her cultural program. She came to my house 3 times. lost the count of businessmen from Wales, from Naples, Florida, many, and I hosted here many Hollywood actors. I've sponsored parties to show them a good time. Ultimately, the best business deals are signed in 3 places. They're either signed on a golf course, in a great restaurant, or in a great dinner or lunch in a house. Those are the places where the biggest business deals are. And I think I've done my contribution to put Malta on the map. I mean, countless interviews, channels like CNN, Deutsche Welle, BBC, Sky TV. There's too many to mention. So. It is a bit of a cliche, it is a bit of a repetitive, but I do love Malta. I think Malta is an incredible place because such a small piece of rock and 8,000 years of history. Find me one island in the world with that amount of history. It doesn't exist. I've checked. I mean, that brings us on par with the archaeological findings at Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. I mean, incredibly old for an island that we don't even have fresh water. Fresh water have to make from the sea. When the Romans came to Malta in the letters, with the whatever documents we found, if I remember correctly, I stand to be corrected, but they said that they hated the island, but they said we make the best olive oil, the best honey, and the best cotton. At the time, Malta was great to make cotton. And remember, Maltese name is coming from Melita. Melita is Latin, so the Romans gave us that name, if I'm mistaken. And Melita comes from Greek Melita, which means sweet, which means honey. So literally the name of Malta is sweet as honey. And we have this history because of our position. It's like somebody put us right in the middle of the Mediterranean, north to south, west to east. It's an incredible, love or hate Malta. You can't take this away from us, that as a people, we're special because we're a part of, we have a piece of everything. I did a DNA test on my blood. My dog has better breeding than me. I have everything. Jewish, I have North African, I have Phoenician, which means Lebanese, I have Portuguese, I have Italian, mostly Sicilian, Greek, Spanish, like I'm everything. And Malta is the ultimate soup of immigrants. Okay, I know you come from Serbia. Now, in 20, 30 years' time, when they do DNA of regular Maltese, they'll find Serbian as well. And there, we are the result of immigration. Okay, and I think that the genuine Maltese, the good-hearted Maltese, will always have space for the genuine immigrant. Why? Because we ourselves, we are the result, we are the birth, the epitome of a melting pot of different cultures. And I think that is why Maltese, the real Maltese, are good-hearted. This is why Saint Paul, he wrote when he was in the Bible, when he was shipwrecked in Malta, immediately he made it a point to note, kind-hearted people who welcomed me immediately. This is history. This has been written for thousands of years now, and I think that's what makes us genuine, and that's what makes us genuine Maltese. We are the safe port in the middle of the Mediterranean storms.
Joseph, now we are in your cellar. I mean, you can get the bed here and leave me for a few hours. So, what is your secret spot to enjoy the wine out far away from the world? Not your home per se, but is there something like secluded area, secluded place in the world that you like going there? And
so I have a small group of friends. And that for me is a secluded area. I mean, if I tell you that I have a secret spot, I don't have, because wine is something that I drink socially, and it's hard to be in secret spot when you're in company.
And the very important question: have you ever thought about making your own wine?
Oh no,
Joseph Calleja cuvée.
I have too much respect to consider making my wine, because I don't have the knowledge, I don't have the time, I don't have probably the patience. It's such an arduous, long process, and I don't know. I mean, I know that some Hollywood actors, and I'm not a Hollywood actor. They, like John Malkovich is doing some wine. Brad Pitt and Angelina had their champagne or their rosé. I forgot which one. But I don't have the time, the patience, the knowledge, and probably most importantly the money to fund. Because of course I would want to make a good wine, and to make a good wine, let alone a great wine, it's a huge, gargantuan, colossal undertaking.
Is there top 5 places that you can recommend to the people when they visit Malta? 5 restaurants.
5 restaurants?
Yeah.
Well, you're gonna make me fight with everyone. Okay. Now, to be honest, I don't go a lot to many restaurants in Malta. Okay. I would say that number 1, in my opinion, in Malta is Tartaroon. Tartaroon is, for me, arguably the best fish restaurant today that I know of in the world. And I'm not just me saying this, but I have many foreign people who even travel by private jet. They say when they eat in this restaurant, it's like incredible. In Malta, another must go to is, if you can get a table, Cicu, da Pippo. Not only for the great food, but there's an atmosphere there that you will not get anywhere else. One of Marvin Gauci's restaurants, I think, is it?
The latest Caviar and Bull.
Don Gauci, Caviar and Bull is very good, but definitely there in God's Old Moon. Definitely, and these are my favorites. I'm not saying they're the best. I'm saying that what are my favorites. And another place which I love in the Maltese Islands is Cartel. Cartel, nothing beats. We go summer by the sea, have the sea right next to you. The service, it changed hands, but it's still good. So those are. I wish you gave me more than 5. But
so you have actually two in Gozo.
Well, yeah, because in Gozo. It's where we used to meet with Lino, and we have history with these families. We have loyalty. We have, as I said, we have, a timeline. We have a history, and we have, and a great restaurant. No restaurant is infallible. You can go to a restaurant, and sometimes the food is not great. Nobody's infallible. It's like one of my performances. You will come to one of my performances where I'm a bit sick or I'm off the weather, but you still enjoy it because you know the product, you know the people, you know the family. So I think that for me, pedigree plays a part. Pedigree not in the sense of the royal highness. Pedigree means dedication, blood, sweat, tears. When it's generation to generation, like for example Tartaroon it's a family-owned, two brothers, twins, with the mother and father all working there in the restaurant. You don't feel like you've been in a restaurant. You enter the restaurant. Like at home. You feel like you've went from your living room to your kitchen, or from a kitchen to your living room. It feels like, and it becomes, when you go to this space, it becomes a ritual as well. So yeah, I mean, in these restaurants that I mentioned, you will never eat badly. I mean, it's very hard for you to eat badly.
3 wines that you always stock in your cellar, no matter what. Like buy a box, I need to have a box at least.
I've never thought of it. Because of the ones I have quite a lot of boxes. But I'll tell you one thing I stock in my cellar, which is Amore Montenegro, because it's a regular, nothing expensive. It's just a digestivo, which I have. Wines, I can't, because I never thought about it. Genuinely, I can't tell you that I can't live with this or can't live with that.
Do you like brandy or grappa?
I love brandy. Grappa a little less, but I'll drink it as well. I love brandy, especially Armagnac, Basse Armagnac. To be, the word brandy, people think is French. Brandy is not a French invention. Brandy was the invention of the Dutch. The Dutch invented, I think it was 2 monks, if I'm not mistaken, but they invented distilled wine. And what distilled wine is burnt wine, right? That's how they distill. And in Dutch, burnt wine is brandewijn, and brandewijn became brandy. So, and there are many brandies around the world, but only one cognac, because cognac has to be made in cognac. But of course, if you go to Moldova, they call it cognac because it's brandy. They should call it brandy. But But brandy is very, very, very
So
interesting.
you call it cognac with K, like in Serbia.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, exactly. That's the correct. So yeah, the brandies. I love grappa. I a good barricata is good barricata. But in fact, I have so many people have given me so many grappas as gifts that probably will take 40 years to drink all the grappa because we never
Don't worry,
touch
you
it.
can always call me.
I invite you. Yes.
And by your opinion, what is the most underrated country wine producer in the world that you know of and that people are constantly dismissing it?
I'm not sure. I don't. My knowledge is not vast enough to know that people are dismissing. But let me think.
By your knowledge.
Maybe Chilean wine. It's looked like a cheap wine, but they have really some beautiful wines in Chile. Maybe Spanish wines are not given enough attention. I went to Ribera del Duero. They have incredible wines. Maybe Spanish wines are not maybe seen as desirable as, let's say, French or Italian or Californian wines. But again, that's my perception. It doesn't mean that I'm correct. So my perception is that these two regions are wines that, and the other one is maybe New Zealand. People focus on just one or two brands and they forget that they really have a thriving wine industry. I recently, actually thanks to your program, I discovered another wine, and it was gorgeous. It was even better than my favorite New Zealand wine. So I think those are what I would mention.
Is there a wine that deserves its own aria or song or a musical?
Well, I'm gonna go what I said before, Clos 2004, which by the way is this bottle. There's a Clos 2004. That's the year of my daughter, and it's one of the best wines I've ever tasted, and it is not expensive when thinking of comparing it to the other big chateaus, and it's one of the best wines I've ever had in my life. And many people who've tasted this, they agree with me. So yeah.
And what would be the rhythm? The rhythm of it?
Nino, you ask too much difficult questions.
I'm a difficult person.
The Clos Laratoire is gentle, silky, smooth, light but deep. So it has to be. It could be a Vivaldi, but could also be a Rachmaninoff. It could also be, the Clos Laratoire is really what in art we say chiaroscuro. It has elements of everything, which is what makes it interesting, right? What is interesting thing in life? Variety. And when you have a variety of sensations from the same wine, it can change your life. And the same thing.
And still,
it has to be
hidden state.
It has to be an art. It has to be a piece of music that tickles different emotions in the same piece, and that's not easy to do.
And the last question for today: what are the 3 destinations for wine that you would recommend apart from Bordeaux?
Easy. Sonoma, which is in California, Napa. Sonoma County, Napa, very, very close by, but in California. And the other one is definitely Spain. The Ribera del Duero region is beautiful, old monasteries, great restaurants, and incredible one winery after another, which is just fantastic. Both the white and, of course, especially the red.
So I'm gonna stock up on the Spanish wine before this show is released.
Okay. Pleasure, my friend.
Joseph.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for coming, Eskil.